What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. How are you doing today, Korea?
Look, I got a win in fantasy. The Seahawks won. I'm on top of the moon. Obviously, the Mariners lost last night, but that's another story. I'm on top of the moon. How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, let's just get right into Monday's game. The long-awaited return of Russell Wilson to Seattle. There's been a lot of controversy about the crowd, booing him before the game. What was your take on that? And yes, what was your take on that?
Look, there's so much like new information coming out now that the relationship was a lot more strained. Obviously, we saw a bunch of players, like former players like Doug Baldwin, Richard Sherman, poking their little jabs at Russell Wilson after the Broncos lost on Monday night. And, it kind of brings the question like, was there really like a bigger problem that we didn't think of? Because I've been hearing rumors that the Seahawks defense, like one time during practice, Sherman picked off Russell Wilson and then he gave it back to him and said, "You fucking suck." And so you don't really know anymore. But at first I was a little disappointed to see the fans booing. Obviously Russell Wilson gave us I mean, technically I don't say Russ, that defense pretty much won the game when you really think about it. But I mean, we have one ring because of him. And, obviously there are a lot of questions like, did he put himself before the team? And that's kind of adding up now that, maybe he really did. That this team, this former Seahawks team was kind of surrounded by Russ after the defense, because it was first the defense. Everyone was talking about how good the defense was, and then I feel like maybe his ego got shot a little bit because of that, but that's beside the point. I mean, the booing, yeah, I kind of expected that to happen, obviously, with how pretty much the offseason transpired. But at the same time, like, it happened, it's over. We don't have to play Denver for another 3 years. We don't get to see Russell Wilson, even though Melvin Gordon wants a Super Bowl rematch. I'm like, okay, buddy, win your division first. But that's beside the point. I just think that, look, I knew it was going to happen. Am I proud about it? Yeah, no. But at the same time, like, you don't really know the story until it fully comes out. But, I mean, the atmosphere there was incredible. I mean, literally, that first drive where Gino just drove down the field, it was electric. I think that may have broken the beast quake for some people. I mean, it was loud there. And I think Russell Wilson finally got tested. I feel like this is, he knew this was going to be loud, but I don't think he realized how loud Seattle could be because, he's on the other side of the field now. He's coming out of the visitors' locker room. And, it was great to see the Seahawks team really step up defensively pretty much throughout that game with a lot of help from penalties on the Broncos. But look, it was a pretty emotional game. Ari, I want to just strictly emotion aside. What do you think of how the Seahawks played? Do you think sorry, there's people mowing next to me, but what do you think? I mean, obviously it's only game one, so we can take it with a grain of salt, but this defense stepped up when it really mattered the most. And the bigger question is how this offense is going to flow. And I think we've seen how Shane Waldron and Geno Smith really, really glue together and how this offense is really going to run smoothly. Ari, what are your thoughts on the Seahawks offense this year?
Yeah, I mean, and they were the first team since I think it was 2009 to start two rookie tackles on the offensive line, and Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, and they both
Shout out
really
Abe Lucas, Wazoo alum.
they both really really stepped up big time. Gino, I mean, there's a few pressures obviously, but for the most part, the pocket was clean, and Gino made a couple of huge throws, stepping up in the pocket, with pressure on him as well, including that first touchdown to Will Dissly in the opening drive. He had a nice pass to Marquise Goodwin as well under pressure. So, I mean, the first half I thought was really, really impressive. Obviously, you're not going to expect him to go 17 of 18, in every half, but just the play calling and, with Waldron, it's all about the short passing game and, staying ahead of the chains. And I was saying, like, it's pretty clear that even though Waldron became the offensive coordinator last year, like last year was Russell Wilson running the show. It wasn't Waldron's offense. And this year or at least this for the first half at least was clearly Waldron's offense. The second half, I thought they got a little bit like too conservative. kind of playing, not to lose instead of to win. Obviously, it worked out. They won the game, but, you're not going to win many games scoring 0 in the second half. So I didn't really like the second half play calling, but the first half I liked a lot. And then defensively, outside of Kobe Bryant getting beat on the Dre G touchdown, which was underthrown by Russell Wilson, and if Bryant just turned around like one step earlier, I think he could have had that picked off. Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant stepping up in their first legitimate game, I thought was really impressive. The Jamal Adams injury sucked. He's probably going to be out maybe the whole season, or at least a large part of the season. But Jackson stepped up in his absence. Quandre Diggs dropped the one interception in the end zone, but overall he was really good as well. The defensive line put really good pressure on Russell Wilson, so that makes you kind of worry about the Broncos. I know they were missing Billy Turner, I believe it was, in their offensive line, but even then, like when you have to go up against Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa of the Chargers, and then you look at the offenses in that division, and it's going to be a really tough division, as we all knew, for the Broncos in the AFC West. For the Seahawks standpoint, super impressive. Obviously, they had the 2 fumbles, Denver at the goal line with Melvin Gordon and then Javonte Williams. And then the Seahawks just had some, huge stops defensively. It's kind of, they've always kind of been the bend but don't break defense, where you're going to drive on them, but where they step up is in the red zone, and that's what we saw again on Monday.
Yeah, there was definitely bend, don't break throughout the whole contest. It was great to see. You mentioned those 2 fumbles at the goal line. Great to see, that defensive line front 4 really get to the quarterback. And obviously, Shelby Harris, the former defensive end for the Broncos, traded to the Seahawks in that Russell Wilson trade. He had a lot to say about that in that post-game presser. He's like, when you trade one of your D linemen from one team to the other team, it shows. Obviously, that D line really got to 2 easy fumbles, one from Gordon, obviously, one from Javonte Williams. And, that Javonte Williams, when it looked like that offensive line was still scrambling to find a play. So it was probably going to be a dead play anyway. But yeah, I agree with you on all those points. Yes, the Jamal injury is definitely a big one. That's a big loss. I've heard it's a torn quad, but I don't know anything to the extent, but it's going to be a long, extensive injury. So that's going to be suck. It's going to suck to see, especially because he was playing injured already in this game with a broken finger, and he wanted to play just because obviously it's the Russell Wilson rematch game. So he obviously had a personal interest in that, and then he gets injured, and it's horrible to see. But as you mentioned, I like the way Tariq Woolen played. He really stepped up. I think it was like the 5th graded rookie corner this week or something like that. So definitely very, very high. Great to see a real rookie. And I don't think Russell Wilson even tested him that much, except for maybe deep balls. But still, he didn't get tested that well.
He had like the 1 PI. Other than that, yeah, he was shut down.
Yeah, exactly. So great to see Tariq Woolen really be a shutdown corner. A lot of people comparing him to Richard Sherman. I definitely see it. And then obviously you mentioned Kobe Bryant. That one deep ball to Jerry Jeudy that just got him a little beat. But if he would have turned earlier, as you said, I feel like that could have been going the other way. So you can't really blame him. But the team took him out after that. But I feel like that's just a rookie mistake, and you learn and you move on from it. So it's great to see that defense really step up. And then you mentioned the offense and how for the first half it was definitely, a lot more of that Shane Waldron offense that, was really moving the ball down the field really well. And obviously a little help because of that undisciplined Denver defense. I feel like that's going to be a huge problem for them if they really want to have any success this season. I feel like the Denver defense is definitely young and just undisciplined. You have Randy Gregory on one side, obviously with his past troubles, and then you have Bradley Chubb, who has not played a single snap since like the 2020 season, I believe. So it's been so long for either one of them. And I feel like that's why, Abe Lucas and Charles Cross really got good pressure on the outside, really getting good tests against those 2 defensive ends. And then, obviously I'd love to see, obviously the one kind of missing piece from that offense was Kenneth Walker. He'll be back next week, so I'm really excited to see how the offense is going to be moving now that we have a 2-back system with Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny. But, yeah, you mentioned DK got his receptions. Obviously, that 1 fumble that happens. It was just, going to the ground and, didn't take care of the ball properly. But you mentioned the second half, it was just a lot more protecting, trying to keep the lead instead of trying to build on top of it. And, I get it, for a high atmosphere game like this, you really want to win because it's a home game. It's Russell Wilson coming back, and I get that. But I feel like, there were definitely some opportunities where this offense really could have, made that statement in the second half to kind of end it or something like that, and not rely on Nathaniel Hackett's dumb play calling of, as I like to call it, Mr. Broncos country, let's go wide, or Broncos country, let's miss, or Broncos country, let's hide, as I like to say, because, I don't know what that play calling was. You have Russell Wilson on a fourth. And first of all, they wasted so much time with, let's go into this play. First of all, they wasted so much time just getting up the field. They had all 3 timeouts. They didn't choose to take any until like under 30 seconds, which is already questionable. And then it's a 4th and 5 situation, but it's a very long field goal. And you just paid this man so much money after an extension and a trade, and you're not going to put him on the field? What? And then coming out 2 days later, now you say, oh, well, I think we should have gone for it on 4th and 5. Really? I don't think so. Because if it was the Seahawks, we definitely would have gone for it. But I just feel like, Nathaniel Hackett, dumb play calling, questionable play calling, that's going to be also one of the things that, may be a thorn on the Broncos' side. Is Nathaniel Hackett really the answer? I mean, we'll see. Because obviously, this offense looked like it was pretty stable. I mean, obviously, once Russell Wilson got his feet under himself, it looked like they were, slowly moving down and doing what Russ does. Let's let Russ cook. But he's cooking up a plate of nothing in that loss. But that's another thing for another time. But I just feel like, the Seahawks definitely surprised a lot of people, and I think the Seahawks were going to surprise a lot of people. No one had them in this game. I think 86% of bettors had the Broncos in this game. So literally 86% of sports bettors lost money because they said, "Oh, you're betting on Geno Smith." But still, I mean, that man covers the spread all the time, but we're not going to talk about that. I feel like the Seahawks team really surprised a lot of people. They have a week 2 matchup against a Niners team that really shocked a lot of people, losing at Chicago. And then for Denver, they obviously got to go play Houston. But I feel like for the Broncos, I feel like, there's a lot of turmoil going on right now. I feel like that defense really needs like an attitude adjustment because of how undisciplined they were. I don't know what the total was, but I know it's more than 10 penalties. A considerable amount was on the defensive line in terms of PI or holding or illegal contact. Or
they had 12 penalties.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't win a game if you're averaging 12 penalties. You simply cannot win a game like that. So I feel like this Broncos team is definitely going to be undisciplined, and that's why I have them missing the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team just because of how, there's a lot of struggle on that on the defensive front. But you mentioned offensive line. They are going to get I forgot his name, Billy.
Billy Turner.
Yeah, Billy Turner. Yeah, they're going to get him back soon, and he's a big key piece of that offensive line, obviously, because Russell Wilson, he was getting a lot of pressure from the outside. And also, shout out, I think it was Jordan Nwosu for the Seahawks. Great day. He was getting pressure up the middle all day. So great to see, even with, those big names like Bobby Wagner and Sherman and, all the defensive names and offensive names that are gone, the Seahawks can still play some good football. So that was great to see. And it was obviously great to see a Seahawks win, beating Mr. Broncos country, let's hide himself on the sideline. And yeah, it was great to see. And, it really, although it brought me joy, it also made me a little concerned because I don't know what the draft situation may be looking like in the future if, say we're in a tiebreaker situation. And we're going to be trying to trade or trying to get a QB this offseason or in the draft. And, that makes me a little concerned, but obviously emotion, that was all aside. Just great to see the Seahawks beat Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I think it can be a huge confidence booster, like just knowing that if they can beat Denver, they have not the toughest schedule overall because they finished so bad last year that they faced, a lot of teams that finished 3rd, 4th, or whatever in the division. So, yeah, people were calling the Seahawks, the worst team in the league, blah, blah, blah. Like, if Geno doesn't turn the ball over, they're probably going to win at least 5, 6, 7, 8. I think, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think this will be a big game against the 49ers coming up. they're already 10-point underdogs, which is pretty surprising to me. Against 49ers this weekend, we'll see if George Kittle plays. That's still up in the air. But I just want to touch on real quick the split between Javonte and Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon saw more carries, 12-7, but Javonte caught 11 passes. Wilson was jumping off to him early and often. Looking at the splits, Javonte played 38 plays to 25 plays. He played them more early downs, more goal line. He played them all the 2-minute drill. They split short yardage. It was really just the third downs that Melvin Gordon dominated, I guess, in that regard. That's partially because he's more reliable as a blocker than Javonte is, on those third down plays. But overall, I was talking about it being like a 60-40 split for Javonte, which is all he really needs to offer, top 12 upside, and that's what we saw from him, in this week 1 matchup. And I think, he'll see more than 7 carries. I think, most games as well. They kind of like the game flow of this game, like the flow is kind of a little bit, kind of up and down, kind of weird. Even though, it was close throughout. So I think, you can expect to see more than 7 carries from Javonte, moving forward. Obviously, he's not going to catch 11 passes every game, but I think, if he can even see, 5 to 7 targets and 10 plus carries, I think that's all he really needs, And he could have the touchdown, obviously, where he fumbled in the goal line as well, which would have given him an even bigger week. So I expect to continue to see about a 60-40, give or take split most weeks. With maybe Melvin Gordon controlling the third downs, with his blocking ability, but Javonte controlling pretty much every other, aspect of the game in the backfield.
Yeah, I was pretty much going to say the same thing from what I saw. It looked like Javonte was pretty much kind of the 2-down back, but you mentioned a lot of passing, dump down, screen pass. And I think that's just the offense that Nathaniel Hackett and that offense is pretty much going to run or try to run, a bunch of screen passes, the way that Russ wants it. And I feel like that is kind of a contingency as to why there are just a bunch of screen passes to Javonte Williams. But, I mean, his ability to break tackles is really the reason why he is the lead back. He broke, I think a few tackles in that Monday night game where you should think, okay, he may take it to the house. But that's just kind of how he runs, and that's his style coming out of UNC. So I feel like this split is pretty much going to be upside for Javonte Williams as well. You mentioned Melvin Gordon on third down, also in first and goal situations. That's just maybe more experienced, or, in terms of, just blocking help as well. You mentioned that. I feel like Melvin Gordon will be in that role, but in terms of just being maybe like the power back or, the lead back, I feel like Javonte Williams will have that role pretty much locked down, and his ability to break tackles and, spot the holes and going through them and trying to, get extra yardage. So, I definitely, we talked about it earlier and how this is going to be a 60-40 split. Kind of looked like that, maybe 65-35, but it's still in favor of Javonte. And I still feel, yes, it was week 1. Obviously, it was a personal game, but I don't think Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams are going to fumble each once every time at the goal line throughout the rest of the season. They're still going to get their touches and their value. So I feel like Javonte Williams still does have a bunch of upside in terms of how the offense is going to be used for Russell Wilson this year.
Without a doubt. So I think we'll get into some of the college football games this weekend now. We'll get into the first game post Scott Frost after losing to, I think,
Georgia Southern.
Yeah. We'll see if Nebraska, if that was the problem with Scott Frost, if they can, start being more competitive and start winning more without him, or if maybe there's more issues than just Scott Frost's career. What's your take on that situation in this game overall?
Look, Nebraska just has a bunch of problems. Obviously, losing to Georgia Southern was kind of the pinnacle of the problem. I feel like this Nebraska team is not in like the same position as last year as like USC, where they struggled in the early part of the season. They fired Clay Helton, and then they move on to next season, and now they're like one of the favorites to win the Pac-12. Nebraska's not that. I feel like this Nebraska team just lacks a bunch of like talent, in my opinion. I feel like maybe Scott Frost was the problem, but at the same time, Nebraska's been doing this pre Scott Frost, and I feel like it's just going to continue. I feel like this season's going to be a wash away for them, especially now they have to face, number 6 ranked Oklahoma, who has put in pretty much impressive numbers under Dylan Gabriel, who has not even thrown an interception this season yet. And in their 2 wins, they look pretty impressive, dominating Kent State and UTEP still. But I don't feel like if Nebraska really wants to make a statement, I don't think it's going to be against an Oklahoma team that could be in the college football playoff this year, the way that they're going. And I don't think that Nebraska. I mean, right now the line I'm seeing is Oklahoma -11, and I feel like that's a pretty favorable line for Nebraska. I think it's going to be more. I think Oklahoma may beat them by 14 or more, just because of how the turmoil in that locker room is definitely affected too. Because you lost your head coach, and that's going to cause a lot of turmoil in that. In that locker room, a bunch of maybe some teammates, definitely got recruited there because of Scott Frost, and now he's not there. So it's like, well, why am I here? What do I want to play for? So Nebraska has a lot of issues going on in that locker room right now. I think Oklahoma wins this easily by 2 touchdowns or more. I just don't think Nebraska really has any identity right now. I feel like this is a wash away season. And for an Oklahoma team that's really trying to contend in the Big 12 and also contend for that college football playoff position, I feel like, this is just a little step in the way for an Oklahoma team that definitely can run the Big 12 this year.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, when it comes to coaching changes, there's kind of 2 ways you can go. You could kind of motivate the players to want to play better. Man, maybe they didn't like Scott Frost. Obviously, we don't know it. Maybe they would play better without him, or maybe, these are college kids. Obviously, maybe it gets to their head and they play worse in a way. So, yeah, I mean, I agree that this line seems pretty low for Oklahoma. Like you said, team competing for the college football playoff this year, and they should take care of business pretty easily by at least 11. So now we'll go into a top 25 matchup between BYU and Oregon. BYU coming off a double overtime win over Baylor, who is number 9 then. Oregon, after the embarrassing defeat against Georgia in the week 1, they came back and dropped 70 points on Eastern Washington this past weekend. So we'll see if Oregon, obviously it's Eastern Washington, so now this will be their first real test since the Georgia game, before they enter Pac-12 play. Corey, what's your take on this game?
Look, I think that BYU definitely has the momentum right now. They're playing good football right now, and the way they're just attacking you on offense. I mean, obviously their main guy right now, Jaron Hill, the quarterback, junior, he's playing good ball. He's had some good weeks as well, and he's just playing good football. And then you have Oregon, right? Oregon is definitely a struggle team right now. Oregon, they are coming off a win against Eastern Washington. Okay, who cares? They got beat by Georgia so badly, it was embarrassing. I don't think Oregon really knows what this BYU team is. And I feel like this is going to be like last year. Like when WSU was expecting BYU to come in, they overestimated them. They looked over them. I mean, yeah, BYU barely scratched out a win against Baylor at home. But Oregon, they haven't had a really impressive win all season. And that's why I feel like that's going to continue. I feel like this BYU team definitely is underrated this year. I feel like BYU is definitely one of those, group of 6 in their last year, one of those group of 6 teams where they could definitely not only make a run for a potential college football playoff. We'll see. We never know. But also maybe a New Year's 6 for the first time. Right now, Oregon's like a 4-point favorite, and I feel like that line is just a little too high. I feel like BYU is really getting underestimated right here and overlooked just because of how they don't get that much coverage, and no one's gonna stay up to watch on the East Coast a 7 p.m. game against Baylor that goes into double overtime. It's 2 a.m. on the East Coast. No one's gonna watch that. So I would love to see BYU. And they pretty much owned the Pac-12 last year. We saw BYU literally defeat 5 teams from the Pac-12 last year, and I feel like that streak continues. I like BYU in this game. I feel like they're getting underestimated and overlooked, but definitely gained a lot of respect beating a good Baylor team at home, and I feel like that just momentum will continue, and I feel like that they will be defeating Oregon on the road.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good underdog moneyline bet for those who bet on BYU. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised as well that Oregon's a 3.5-point favorite, just given what's happened so far. But obviously, BYU is kind of always going to be a little bit undervalued or underrated no matter how good they are, just given, the name of the school and, people don't necessarily believe in them until they do it, more than once, which I did against Baylor last week. So we'll see if they can come back and beat Oregon, and have back-to-back top 25 wins. That would surely, probably push them well into the top 10 if they can win this game on the road. So now we'll go into a Penn State-Auburn game. Last I looked, Penn State was a 3-point favorite on the road in Auburn. Both teams are 2-0. Penn State's coming off wins over Purdue and Ohio, Auburn, Mercer, and San Jose State, which they only won by 8 over San Jose State last weekend. What's your take on this game, Korea?
Look, this Auburn team is not good. I don't feel like they're playing good football right now. Obviously, TJ Finley, the quarterback, he's having a horrible year. So far, he has only 1 touchdown and 3 picks. And obviously, you could obviously say the thing with Penn State, obviously, barely beating Purdue on the road and all that stuff. But, that was a high electric game week 1. And I feel like this Penn State team has really evolved ever since then. And now we're about 3 weeks later, and now they have to play Auburn. And I believe that's the second game of the series down in Alabama. And I feel like this Auburn team it's just not going to compete with them. Yes, it's definitely good SEC Big Ten battle. Yes, Penn State, definitely a little underrated this year on how they're playing football. Yes, they beat Ohio last week by 30-something, but Sean Clifford's playing really good football right now. I mean, about 5 picks to 1 interception. He has almost 500 passing yards in 2 games, so he's definitely throwing the ball. And the thing about Penn State is, yes, they haven't played anyone significant, but they're going to be playing in a tough Big Ten East division where you have Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State all ranked very good teams as well. And then why not add the resume and beat Auburn as well? So I feel like Penn State right now is a 3-point favorite. And I feel like that's a good line for them. Obviously, just because you're going to a big SEC school down there in Auburn, and that's obviously, yes, Happy Valley is a wonderful environment for college football. But I mean, Alabama, they take their football seriously down there. And I feel like if Penn State's going to have to win, they're going to have to rely on Sean Clifford to really lead them. They do have an established run game, I feel. Singleton definitely gets his carries as well. He's averaging about about 10 yards a carry. So he's definitely getting his carries in after an impressive week against Ohio, where he almost ran for 200 yards. And Singleton is definitely going to be one of the bigger factors on the ground, but in the air, it's all about it's all about Sean Clifford and seeing what he can do now, pretty much getting their true big test of the season, going down to Auburn to an SEC school and really competing hard.
Yeah, I thought the 3-point line for Penn State seemed a little bit low. But I mean, normally in college football, the home team, if it's like a true home game, that kind of makes a difference on the line. So I guess that's kind of why it's not a huge surprise. But I definitely lean Penn State as well here. So now we'll go into the ABC game at night. Michigan State traveling from East Lansing all the way to Seattle to face Washington. I was a little bit surprised that UW was I think 3.5-point favorite last I saw. Both teams cruised so far, so this will be the first true test for both teams. Michigan State, Peyton Thorne, a little bit concerning, 3 picks in the first 2 weeks against not as great opponents. But they're kind of led by the dominant, the ground game of Jalen Berger and Jarek Broussard, who both got off to fast starts. And then for Washington, it's the Indiana transfer, Michael Penix, who's been impressive again, albeit against, not great competition. Korea, putting your bias aside, do you think that this line is more about Michigan State maybe being a little bit more overrated, or UW being underrated, or a little bit of both? What do you think?
I think it's just more Michigan State being a little overrated. I feel like, yes, Seattle, UW, Husky Stadium, it's a big environment, even though we just won the Apple Cup in it. But that's another side. That's another story for another time. The way Penix Jr. is playing right now, obviously they haven't played competition yet. The Huskies will now host Michigan State in what's going to be a pretty big game, I believe, on Saturday. And I feel like this Michigan State team, you mentioned Peyton Thorne did not look good. He's already thrown 3 picks and 4 TDs. So, I feel like, and you're playing not that great competition as well. So I feel like this Michigan State team that's why I think this line is definitely in favor of Washington, only for the reason I feel like this Michigan State team is a little overrated in comparison to how Washington's playing. But then again, we really haven't seen Washington play anyone of significance. They've played Portland State. Oh, whoop-de-doo. And then you've played Kent State. Oh, whoop-de-doo. You have 2 cities. They played 2 teams where cities aren't even states. Well, I feel like come on here. Like, they're not even states. Like, where's Kent State? Obviously, that's in Ohio, but Portland, not a state either. But that's beside the point. I feel like this is a true test for both teams. As you mentioned, I feel like if Michigan State really wants respect, this is definitely the game that they want to win. And for the Huskies, obviously, you saw Wazoo defeat Wisconsin down in Madison last week, and I feel like, okay, if we can beat Wisconsin, now it's Washington's turn. You have a good Michigan State team coming into your building, you better get that win. So this is definitely going to be a true test for both teams, to see how those offenses really work. Penix is really doing a great job right now, completing over 60% of his passes, throwing the ball really well. And then when it comes to playing a top 15 opponent, right? Yeah, Michigan's number 11. Yeah, playing a top 15 opponent, this is your time to really step up. And I feel like, this is definitely going to be a good game. I'm definitely circling this game to watch on Saturday, just in terms of a true competitive atmosphere. And especially because, Husky fans, they really love to show up when it really matters. And so that's why I feel like this game is definitely going to be a really, really electric game. I feel like they could give Michigan State a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really watch the first 2 Husky games, but I've heard, at least I saw on Twitter, that the first 2 games at home didn't, draw great attendance, and that could be just because of the opponent. Obviously, so I assume that this game against Michigan State, well, it should be sold out, I assume, and sold out games at Husky Stadium are always electric. So it's the ABC game at 4:30 Pacific time, so it definitely should be a game to tune in to watch. That's all I had, Curry. Was there anything else from Saturday or college football that you want to talk about?
No, but guys, tomorrow, obviously, we're going to be getting into week 2 of the NFL season. So we're going to be previewing, that Thursday night game. We're going to be previewing the rest of the weekend slate for Sunday and Monday, because Monday there's two, I believe, 2 Monday night games. So, and we get to see what Thursday night football will like on Prime Video. And I've heard the rumors about that new football. So we'll see if that new football is going to be there or not. I really hope it's not, but maybe we'll see Justin Herbert throw a 99-yard touchdown. We'll see. But Peep, tomorrow we're going to be doing our breakdown of the weekend slate. But that was everything I had. This has been an episode of AKP Sports Talk. Ooh, it's a Wednesday, guys. That's Ari. I'm Curry. We will see you guys tomorrow for our preview of the weekend slate, and then also Friday for some last-minute starts and sits before the weekend. This has been AKP Sports Talk. Peace out, guys.